incredibly humbled to be here today and to be able to talk a little bit about ZooU. It's based very much just on my experience playing it, reflecting on it as a designer, and thinking through the challenges this project had to face probably, and talking a little bit about what we can learn for Games for Change from that. So what is it? It is a product made by 3C Institute, the C standing for Communication, Cooperation, and Confidence. It is a research-proven online game that assesses children's social and emotional skills, something that is much needed, and also much later on. I had challenges to face myself when I played this game. I can learn something here. It is proven that social literacy improves peer relations and also increases academic success. So that's the purpose of this game, to help in this matter. The skills that are being assessed by ZooU are emotion regulation, social initiation, so how well we do when there's a group talking, and do we dare to go there and establish contact with them. Empathy, putting yourself into somebody else's shoes, taking their perspective. Cooperation, communication, and impulse control, in this case defined as staying on task and not deviating from what you're supposed to do. Very, very tough things to learn sometimes. The structure of the game is an introduction by Principal Wilde. So maybe I should say the fiction of this is you are a kid in a school, and the school is there to educate zookeepers. So it's wonderfully capturing in the imagination. And your principal is this very charming zookeeper gentleman. So he introduces you to the ZooU school and what you're up for. You can create your own character, so you can choose whether you want to play as a little boy or a little girl, and you can choose all the features with skin color, hair color. So it's wonderfully diverse and allows you to really take over this identity and own it. You have a practice room where you are introduced to the most basic controls. So mechanic-wise, it's a really, really simple game. It has 6 initial assessment scenes, which totally flabbergasted me when I first played, and you will see why in a second. And then Principal Wilde comes back and talks about the skill builder behind it. So you are getting more information, what this game is about, why you're playing it. And what is a little bit unusual about this is that you are supposed to give your best effort playing this game. So you're not really supposed to touch everything and press every button and try everything out and see what happens and sort of learn by messing with the system. You are actually supposed to do what you think is the best decision in the situation. And being also an avid gamer, I was not prepared for this. And then you have the 30 skill building scenes that build on top of each other, 6 scenes pro social skill that you're supposed to learn and be assessed in. So let me show you just real quick the one example for an assessment, how that works. I chose the emotion regulation because it somehow really resonated. So this has a lot to do with bullying. I really had to regulate my emotions. So I picked this character here just for kicks. And you're being called to class, and there are these guys in the hallway, and they're giving you a hard time, and they want a hallway tall from you. And they don't let you pass. So I tried to just go to class, but they don't really let you do that. And so you have these different options of answering to their taunts. And this actually comes with voiceover, which I didn't manage to capture here. And the voiceover also gives you an indication for what is the best way to respond to this a little bit. So one is really optimistic and confident and upbeat. The other is very apologetic. We're sorry, guys. I didn't know there's a hallway tall. And one is super rude and is like, what are you talking about? I'm not paying you punks a hallway tall. So I always choose the very upbeat response to this. This guy just laughs at you all the time. So yeah, that's a good one, hallway tall. And you can listen to all of these possible answers before you choose one. So you get a sense, not just through the text, but also through the voiceover, what is probably a good attitude to have in that regard. Yes, I'm not paying the hallway tall, and I'm going to go to class now. funnily, this does the trick and they let me pass. And so you can choose whether you want to just silently go in, say something snarky, or say, bullies are so annoying. I was kind of not sure what would be the right response here. I figured that don't say anything is much better than being snarky about it, but then I also thought, well, it's kind of, yeah, assert yourself a little bit. But you don't get any feedback in the assessment scene. So that's what really sets them apart from the skill building scenes, that you're not getting any feedback right as you're playing, because this is just supposed to see where you stand with the emotional skills that you have. So I played through all of these 6 scenes, and then I looked at my assessment, like, oh my God, I'm not 12 years old again. I have so much to learn. And I was kind of looking forward to the skill building scenes to actually learn that stuff. So I picked another emotion regulation scene just to have some comparison between the two and how the feedback comes into play with this one. And it's, again, revolving around issues of respect and a little bit of bullying. And you start off by the teacher telling you there's a math test tomorrow, so you know you will have to study for this. And you have to get your books from the locker. And you're getting ready for the, this is a really long introduction. Okay, so you see these 2 guys here chatting, and when you play this, there is really not much else that you can do than collect your books and listen to their conversation. So I did feel like a snoop when I was playing this, because I didn't want to listen in, but the game didn't give me a choice. And that was by design, as turned out very quickly. And there's all this other fun stuff here. You see the little picture, and there's this little worm that's crawling through, and of course I want to click on everything because I'm a gamer, and you shouldn't do that, because that means you have really low impulse control. So, so I got my books, and I hear them chatting. It's like, oh, la, 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 la. And then at some point, the game locks you out of that scene, and this happens. Uncomfortable. Mind your own business, you little snoop. Yeah, well, wanted to, couldn't. So really put into this role, it makes it feel very real. Then you do something very nasty. Like, I was so mad. Okay, so this is great. When I saw this, I was so surprised that a game would do that, and I was kind of waiting for any kind of feedback to how this makes me feel. But of course, that's not for the game to decide. So this is all about putting yourself into that actual situation and inhabiting that and embodying that. So it is my assessment how this makes me feel. And you get these different characters, body postures to decide, and also to what degree. Because if you want to regulate your emotions successfully, it's really helpful to know how mad you are, how annoyed you are, how surprised, how happy. So that's something the game lets you do in practice, just to listen in. And I found that really, really innovative. And then after you're done with that, you can pick a response to them, which is, again, on the continuum of really snarky to defensive to very neutral, and just, hey, I'm not a snoop. So here, responding to the guys. And this was confusing. You can decide whether you're just thinking this to yourself, whether you're responding to them or saying it to other kids. And I decided to keep it to myself here. And now comes another interesting part. You go home after this encounter, and of course, this would bug you at home. This wouldn't just be over with this sequence. This would be something, if you're treated so unfairly, this is something you take home and mull over in your bedroom at night. And that's something the game allows you to do. Now, the game gives you, again, choices to talk yourself out of this somehow. So you can reflect again on how this makes you feel now, and to reassess your emotions, whether you have cooled down or not, and also whether you want to internalize what just happened and take all the blame and feel bad and super worried, or whether you give yourself a little bit of a pep talk and try to see the situation more objectively. It's like, other kids know I'm not a snoop, and I didn't mean to listen into that. It's all good. But then something interesting happens. After you picked, even if you picked the right answer, you get the question of how this makes you feel now. And when you say it makes you feel great, it doesn't impact how you respond to these kids the next day. So if you picked, I'm still so annoyed and they were really mean to me and you did all the wrong thinking, but said, no, I'm feeling much better, everything's fine now. You go to school the next day and you don't even talk to them. So there's this slight mismatch between what you say to yourself and how you assess your feeling. And I think that's because the game doesn't want to interpret or validate your own assessment of your feelings. So going back to school the next day. And I have another option for a conversation with people now because I am in a much better mood and I didn't internalize the bad feelings. And I choose not to bring it up again and say, hey, well, are you ready for the math test? And everything's good. And I collected all these coins along the way, which showed me that I clearly did the right thing. But this is not the only feedback the game gives at this point. It also shows you every individual scene that you went through in the end, and Principal Wild talks about it and reflects with you on what you did and what that means. And I think that's really informative, even though in real life you might choose to act differently sometimes, and it's not always the 100% correct option. But it still helps you to think through alternatives to what you did here. So let's review what just happened. And it shows you exactly which scenes were handled correctly and which scenes were not. And you also get more context on why emotion regulation is important for you. Do I like to fast forward this a little bit? Okay, so now here you can see all the different scenes that went right, and that was the one that went wrong. And I'm still kind of puzzled what actually went wrong here. It says you should take the time to think about this and calm down, but I didn't really find an option to do that here. At least I kept it to myself that I was very displeased with this encounter. So the game encouraged exploration to the extent that you should replay it and go back to it and then revisit these scenes and see what different feedback you get to them. So in that sense, there's definitely replayability and encouragement to explore and experiment. And every emotional skill that you can learn is scaffolded. So you start very simply, and then it has different difficulty levels, and it gets really complex and really involved. So what makes a good game? Creating real situations. I got that from Chessy Shell. A lot of this is from Chessy Shell, and some of it is from Jim G, and some of it is from Scott Osterwald, because they're my heroes. So creating real situations, being able to really envision yourself in that situation and seeing how it applies to you. ZooU most definitely does that because it puts you in a school environment, which you probably will be in if you are in that age group, and it's where you need to be able to have these social skills. However, it also taps into imagination by giving this additional fiction of the zookeeper environment and the animals that are there. And it's not just the boring school system, but this is exciting. There's a gorilla in the room and he plays the piano. And it also fosters embodied experiences, so every action that you take has a consequence in the world and you learn by doing in the game. Obviously, this has its limits with something that is based on dialogue and where you have to break down extremely complex human-human social interactions into quantifiable outcomes. So we can argue about some of these outcomes and why they're wrong and why they're right, but that, I think, goes with creating a game as ambitious as this one. Here's where I saw a little bit of tension in the design, what games are good at part 2. The 4 freedoms of play that Scott Osterwald postulated at some point, that are exploration, experimentation, the freedom to fail, and the freedom to try on new identities. It's definitely freedom to try on Well, freedom to try on new identities only in the sense of you can look differently, but you're supposed to be yourself. The freedom to fail, yes, of course you have that, you get feedback, but it's slightly disconnected because you only get the feedback through the coins when you're playing the game, and then you get the explanation from Principal Wild later on, and it's still not totally clear what just happened. So I think you would have to replay these scenes a lot of times to get a better understanding, and it probably is a very good idea to play this or discuss this with an educator or a parent afterwards to see what just happened and have a dialogue about it, not just take everything at face value. So I want to revisit the Hallway Debacle real quick. Now this is a different character, just so you see there is variety here, wonderful. And same thing. Ooh, warm. Okay. Picking different emotion really doesn't have any impact at all. So now I'm at home and I'm brooding, and I think all of these questions that I can ask myself are totally legit. So they always think I'm listening to their conversations. Why is it not allowed for me to think through this? So I felt really irked by that fact that I have to have the right thoughts. And it makes sense if you want to build that skill, but do you have to get it out there? And if I feel better afterwards, and that was my assessment, shouldn't that have an impact on how I interact with the kids when I'm back at school? So this disconnect between my assessment of how I'm feeling and the game's interpretation of what the right answer is to these questions of how I'm feeling about this, is just not connected to each other. So that is a tiny quibble that I have with this. So I'm going back to school the next day. Oh. And I cannot even say anything. This is it. We are not friends anymore. I'm sorry. Okay. Very different approach to designing a game for learning. Assessment as its top priority. You do something and you're told what you did right or did wrong. The experimentation and exploration is partly encouraged, but not quite clear. You have a difficult time connecting the coin mechanic to the feedback from Principal Wild. And there is sometimes also a problem between what you intended as the player and how the game interpreted it, because you might just did the wrong click and the game thinks you are socially inept, which happened to me before. Also, the values that are at play are interesting. So this is music class where we are supposed to compose, to practice a piece of music together, and this is all about cooperation. And the values here, so I'm playing an instrument, the values here were very surprising to me. Also, that cooperation is all about deferring decisions to others. So you are the best cooperator if you keep asking others, what do you want to do? What do you think we should do? How would you like to play this? If you decide on a title of a song, everybody votes for it anonymously if you ask them first. If you just decide, they are dead against it. And then you always have to take their preferences into account for good cooperation, and there is no way of saying, well, but you're really not good at the drums, or you're really not good at the bass. It's all about playing well together. And I totally get that in this context. I was just wondering whether this is always the right message to send without discussing with the kids, whether there are situations when they might want to not front-load cooperation in that sense. So they are doing a very poor job directing the crocodile, the bear, and the octopus. And one of the things that you can suggest is to keep practicing. And as somebody who plays an instrument, I was totally for keeping practicing, and that was the wrong thing to do. And you have to ask the others what they think they should do. And they think we should not all play together, probably. switch instruments around, or who directs which animal. Also get the gorilla involved, because he's really good at playing the piano. It also is very helpful to flatter. It's like, we could really use your talents. Okay. And so they keep doing this. Now you can sort them to the numbers. So she doesn't want to go first because she's scared. So you make sure that you take her wishes into consideration. Then you have another of these instances where this guy really doesn't want to work with bears. So you have to do something about that. And then once everybody's happy and gets exactly what they want, you start to sound wonderful. So what's the right behavior? And right is always in the context of the social skill this game is trying to teach you. And I'm all for this, and this is amazing. But again, I would really encourage people to play this with and discuss the outcomes of these situations with an educator or a parent to see whether this is always the right way to go. Last scene, the right thought but the wrong click. There are some slight usability issues here that tested my impulse control, which is totally the point and so meta, and I love it. So this scene, you are asked to go to the cafeteria and stand in line and wait patiently to be served. That's hard, because as you will see, nothing happens for a long time. I'm testing your patience too. It's very meta. So you're standing in line, there's this interesting mouse, really want to click on that, and there are all these postcards, and there's this other stuff, and there are people who you could talk to, but you're really not supposed to, so you stand there and do absolutely nothing. And if I were at the cafeteria and absolutely nothing happens, I think under some circumstances, it might be a good idea to talk to somebody and say, hey, what's going on? But yeah, not here. You're supposed to sit this out. We're doing this together. And then after some point, just like absolute eternity, you prove that you have fantastic impulse control. It's like, yeah, so good. Finally, the line is moving. Hallelujah. That's part of it. That's by design. And then they ran out of food, which is a very big disappointment. So by that time, I'm hungry and I'm impatient and I'm really unhappy. So he goes away. He gets more food. And then I start to have issues with controlling the game. It's like, okay, where do I go now? What's happening? There's a free spot there. I see it. It's just, let's move. And no. So click on this. It's like, oh no, And I already knew this is wrong. And there's also no error recovery. It's like, now I'm stuck. Oh God. Well, let's go back. I'm so sorry. It's like, there goes my lunch. And there goes my lunch. It's like, I'm here, please, Pepe. Bring me my burger. No, okay. Maybe, there's corn, good. Yeah, veggies, awesome. Hey, ostrich. Hey, dessert. No, and that isn't even, I really wanted to, it didn't happen. So she's upset with me. It's like, your plate is empty because you cannot follow the rules. If you learn how to listen, I'll let you operate the soda machine. But no such luck. Okay. This is just so unfair. But in principle, of course, this makes sense, and I guess it is a really good tool to assess impulse control and learning about it. But again, I think you would have to take some of this with a grain of salt. I replayed this so many times, you have no idea, until I got a full plate. Okay, yeah, great. So the coins are not the only mechanism to give feedback in the game. There are these really wonderful tools here. So you can get reports on your assessment reports, and you can get skill builder reports. And they show you exactly where you stand and how much progress you made throughout the game. So you see this is really hugely complex, so you have to dig deep and really sit down and interpret all that data and figure out what it means. It shows you red flags in your behavior, so if you're constantly clicking on a million things, it would be a red flag. If you constantly just skip through the dialogue and guess and you have random behavior patterns, it means you are not paying attention, and that's something to watch out for. So all of these things really mean that you need to give your best effort to be of any value. And you have also the skill builder report where you can see where you rank and how your skill consists of different aspects. So in conclusion, I think it has a fantastic research basis. It's very, very rich. Every design decision has been informed by a very sound understanding of how social skills work and what you need to build them. It is very realistic in terms of the school setting, yet infused with imagination. It's challenging. It's not easy to guess the right answer, and you shouldn't. I think it's only partly a learning tool because of the feedback being worked into this game in a tricky manner that doesn't make it easy to connect what you did and why it was wrong or right. The coins indicate right choices, but it's not always totally clear what the right choice was. Little error recovery within the scene. If you're stuck in a bad dialogue, there's just no way of politely extruding yourself from that. And it's a really fantastic tool to promote discussion and reflection on social skills, but probably best used in a context. Okay, that was that. Thank you.